Let me tell you something. The world doesn't usually destroy people with giant disasters. More often, it changes lives with tiny decisions that nobody pays attention to. A careless word spoken in anger. A business deal signed too quickly. A friendship abandoned because of pride. A dream given up after one difficult season. A habit repeated every morning until it quietly becomes a destiny. Think about this for a moment. Every bridge that collapses first had a tiny crack. Every forest fire started with a spark. Every successful life started with one wise decision repeated over and over again. And every life filled with regret usually has a trail of rushed decisions that seemed harmless in the beginning. Most people believe life is about moving faster. They believe speed equals success. They think whoever gets there first wins. But here's what most people don't understand. Life does not reward the fastest person. Life rewards the person who knows when to move and when to wait. There is tremendous power in the pause. The pause is where wisdom lives. The pause is where emotion loses its grip. The pause is where character speaks louder than impulse. Years ago, I learned something that completely changed the way I looked at success. I watched two men start almost identical journeys. They had similar opportunities, similar intelligence, similar education, similar dreams. One man reacted to everything immediately. If someone criticized him, he answered instantly. If he saw a business opportunity, he jumped without asking enough questions. If he became excited, he spent money he didn't have. If he became discouraged, he quit before the lesson arrived. He was always moving, always busy, always doing something. But strangely, he never seemed to get anywhere. The other man looked slower. Sometimes people even called him indecisive, but they misunderstood him. He wasn't slow because he was afraid. He was slow because he respected decisions. He knew every choice has consequences that often arrive years later. So before speaking, he listened. Before investing, he studied. Before trusting, he observed. Before quitting, he reflected. And year after year, while everyone laughed at his patience, his life quietly became extraordinary because wisdom almost always whispers. Impulse always shouts. Let me ask you something. How many problems in your life were created because you moved before you thought? How many arguments started because emotion was faster than wisdom? How many opportunities disappeared because fear convinced you to run? How many nights have you replayed conversations wishing you had remained silent for just another minute? Pain has an interesting way of becoming a teacher. The problem is that most people only listen after they suffer. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we learned before the pain instead of after it? Think before you move. Not because life should be lived in fear, but because life deserves to be lived with intention. Every morning when the sun rises, it silently asks every human being one question. Will you react today or will you respond? Those two words appear almost identical, but they create completely different futures. Reaction belongs to emotion. Response belongs to wisdom. Reaction belongs to habit. Response belongs to purpose. Reaction creates regret. Response creates peace. I once met an ordinary man who worked in a small repair shop. Nothing about him looked extraordinary. His clothes were simple. His paycheck was average. His car was old enough that people probably assumed he wasn't successful. But every conversation with him revealed something remarkable. He never made important decisions while angry. He never accepted opportunities on the first conversation. He never answered criticism immediately. He carried a small notebook. Whenever something upset him, instead of reacting, he wrote down what happened. Then he waited, sometimes 24 hours, sometimes several days. When I asked him why, he smiled and said something I'll never forget. My emotions are temporary. My decisions are permanent. What incredible wisdom, how many broken marriages would still exist if people remembered that sentence? How many friendships would survive? How many careers would continue? how many dreams would still be alive? Temporary emotions, permanent decisions. Here's what most people don't understand. The greatest battles you'll ever fight will never happen in public. They happen inside your own mind. The battle between patience and impulse, between discipline and comfort, between wisdom and ego, between long-term vision and short-term pleasure. Nobody applauds those victories. Nobody posts them online. Nobody even notices. Yet those invisible victories become visible success years later. There is something fascinating about the human mind. It constantly seeks immediate relief, not long-term fulfillment, immediate relief. You're tired, so you skip today's discipline. You're discouraged, so you abandon tomorrow's dream. You're criticized, so you attack someone back. You're lonely, so you settle for relationships that slowly destroy your future. Immediate relief, long-term regret. But successful people train themselves differently. They ask a different question. Instead of asking, what feels good right now? They ask, what serves my future? That single question changes everything. Imagine standing at a crossroads. One road is smooth, comfortable, easy, crowded. The other road is uphill, quiet, demanding, uncertain. Most people choose based on comfort. Wise people choose based on destination. Never confuse an easy road with the right road. The mountain is difficult, precisely because the view is extraordinary. I remember hearing about a young woman who dreamed of becoming a doctor. Her family struggled financially. People around her doubted her. Friends began earning money while she was still studying. She questioned herself constantly. She wanted to quit dozens of times. Every shortcut looked attractive. Every distraction looked reasonable. Every excuse sounded logical. But before making every major decision, she asked herself one simple question. What will this choice mean 5 years from now? Not tomorrow. Not next week, 5 years. That question became her compass. Years later, she stood in a hospital wearing the white coat she once thought she'd never earn. People called her lucky. Luck? No, thoughtful decisions repeated consistently. Success rarely arrives as one dramatic event. It usually arrives disguised as thousands of quiet choices nobody celebrates. Think before you move, because every habit is casting a vote. Every conversation is building your reputation. Every morning is shaping your identity. Every evening is writing another page of your story. Identity isn't announced. It's accumulated. Character isn't inherited. It's constructed. Destiny isn't found. It's formed. One decision at a time. One ordinary Tuesday. One forgotten Wednesday. One disciplined Friday. One patient Sunday. The compound effect is almost invisible. Plant a seed today. Tomorrow you see almost nothing. Next week, still almost nothing. Next month, barely any change. Many people quit right there because visible results haven't appeared. But underground, roots are growing, strength is developing, foundations are expanding. The tree isn't absent, it's preparing. Human growth works the same way. Ride 10 pages today, nothing dramatic happens. Exercise today, nothing dramatic happens. Save a little money, nothing dramatic happens. Control your temper once, nothing dramatic happens. Repeat those actions for years, and suddenly people call you exceptional. No, you simply respected the invisible power of small decisions. Let me tell you something else. The most dangerous sentence in the English language may be, it doesn't matter. One unhealthy meal doesn't matter. One wasted day doesn't matter. One lie doesn't matter. One missed workout doesn't matter. One angry outburst doesn't matter. Individually, perhaps not. Repeated, they become a life. Just as one wise decision rarely transforms everything overnight. One foolish decision rarely destroys everything overnight. Both are architects. Both build slowly. Both are patient. The question is, which architect are you hiring every single day? I learned something years ago from an old craftsman who spent 40 years building beautiful furniture. Someone asked him why every chair, every table, every cabinet looked almost perfect. He smiled and said, "Because I measure far more often than I cut." That sentence has never left me. Metaphors far more often than you cut. What if we lived like that? Measure your words before speaking. Measure your emotions before reacting. Measure your motives before acting. Measure your priorities before committing. Because once the wood is cut, it cannot become uncut. And life is much the same. Every choice shapes something that cannot always be reversed. That doesn't mean live in fear. It means live with awareness. There is a profound difference. Fear says, don't move. Wisdom says, think before you move. And those two voices sound surprisingly similar until you train yourself to recognize the difference. Because fear freezes your future, while wisdom prepares it. There is a story I often think about whenever people ask me why some individuals seem to build extraordinary lives while others remain trapped in the same cycle year after year. It wasn't the story of a millionaire. It wasn't the story of a famous athlete. It wasn't even the story of someone the world would recognize. It was the story of a bus driver. Every morning before sunrise, he would arrive 20 minutes early. Not because anyone forced him to. Not because someone was checking attendance. He simply believed that rushing creates mistakes and preparation creates confidence. One morning I asked him why he always came so early. He smiled and said, "I don't arrive early for the bus. I arrive early for my mind." Think about that. He wasn't preparing the vehicle. He was preparing himself. He understood that the condition of your mind determines the quality of your decisions. Most people wake up already behind. They rush out of bed. They rush through breakfast. They rush into traffic. They rush into work. And then they wonder why they make rushed decisions. But the person who begins the day with intention usually finishes the day with fewer regrets. Here's what most people don't understand. Your life is rarely changed by one giant decision. It is changed by the condition of the mind that makes thousands of small decisions. A distracted mind creates distracted choices. An angry mind creates destructive choices. A fearful mind creates limited choices. But a disciplined mind begins to see opportunities where other people only see obstacles. That is why your first responsibility every morning is not your phone. It is not your email. It is not social media. It is your thinking. Because if someone else controls your attention, they slowly begin controlling your direction. Think before you move. Not only when making a big decision. Think before you spend your first hour. Think before you respond to criticism. Think before you complain. Think before you give your energy away to things that will not matter 5 years from now. I remember meeting a young man who desperately wanted success. He attended every seminar, read every bestseller, watched every motivational video. He could quote successful people word for word. Yet his life never changed. Finally, after years of frustration, he asked an older mentor, "What book am I missing?" The mentor looked at him and quietly replied, "You don't need another book. You need another habit." Silence filled the room because the young man realized something uncomfortable. Knowledge had become entertainment. He loved learning. He rarely practiced. There is an enormous difference. Knowing what to do and doing what you know are separated by discipline. Discipline is the bridge that carries dreams into reality. Without that bridge, dreams remain beautiful conversations. Let me tell you something. Every successful person you've ever admired became successful on days they didn't feel like it. Not because motivation carried them. Motivation is wonderful, but it is also unpredictable. Some mornings it arrives. Some mornings it doesn't. If your future depends on your feelings, your future becomes unstable. But discipline quietly shows up. Even when excitement has gone home, it says, "We're doing this anyway." It doesn't argue. It doesn't negotiate. It simply moves. That is why thinking before you move is so important. Because disciplined movement is different from emotional movement. One comes from purpose. The other comes from impulse. Imagine standing beside a river after heavy rain. The water is rushing violently. Branches are floating. Mud fills the current. Would you try to see your reflection in that river? Of course not. The water is too disturbed. Now think about your own mind. When anger is rushing through it, when fear is rushing through it, when jealousy is rushing through it, can you really make your best decision? Probably not. Your first responsibility is to let the water settle. Only then can you clearly see what needs to be done. Some people mistake stillness for weakness. Nothing could be further from the truth. Stillness is often one of the strongest decisions a human being can make. To remain calm while everyone else is panicking. To remain respectful while everyone else is shouting. To remain patient while everyone else is demanding instant results. That requires strength. Anyone can lose control. It takes character to keep it. Years ago, I watched a carpenter teaching his apprentice. The young man wanted to finish quickly. Every cut was rushed. Every measurement was guessed. Every mistake forced another repair. The older carpenter never raised his voice. He simply stopped the work and said, "Fast hands belong to slow minds." The apprentice looked confused. The carpenter continued, "When your mind slows down, your work speeds up." That lesson reaches far beyond woodworking. When your thinking becomes clear, your progress becomes steady. Many people spend years fixing mistakes that could have been prevented by 5 extra minutes of thoughtful reflection. 5 minutes. Imagine that. 5 minutes of patience replacing 5 years of regret. What if before every major decision you asked yourself a few honest questions? Am I making this decision because I am afraid? Am I making this decision because I am trying to impress someone? Am I making this decision because I am tired? Am I making this decision because my emotions are louder than my principles? Those questions have a way of exposing the truth. And the truth is not always comfortable. Sometimes the greatest obstacle standing in front of your future isn't your past. It isn't your education. It isn't your circumstances. It isn't your competition. Sometimes the greatest obstacle is the version of yourself that refuses to slow down long enough to think. We live in a world that rewards speed, instant messages, instant delivery, instant entertainment, instant opinions. Everything is immediate, but character has never been instant. Wisdom has never been instant. Trust has never been instant. Mastery has never been instant. The greatest things in life still require time. There is no shortcut to becoming someone your future family can depend on. There is no shortcut to becoming a leader people genuinely trust. There is no shortcut to becoming mentally strong. Every shortcut eventually demands payment. The longer road often pays rewards. That is one of life's great paradoxes. The easy decision usually becomes the difficult life. The difficult decision often becomes the easier life. Think about the student who studies while friends are relaxing. The discipline feels difficult today, but the future becomes lighter. Think about the person who saves money instead of buying every new luxury. The restraint feels uncomfortable now. But years later, freedom begins to appear. Think about the individual who apologizes first. Pride resists it. Character embraces it. One moment of humility can save years of distance between two people. There is power in choosing what is difficult today, so tomorrow can become different. Pain is unavoidable, but not all pain is equal. There is the pain of discipline, and there is the pain of regret. One lasts for a moment. The other can follow you for decades. Every morning, whether you realize it or not, life quietly places both forms of pain in front of you. Which one will you carry? The alarm rings. The pain of getting up, or the pain of staying the same. The opportunity appears. The pain of learning something new, or the pain of wondering what could have been. The conversation needs to happen. The pain of honesty, or the pain of pretending everything is fine. Life never removes pain. It simply allows you to choose which pain will shape your character. I once met a man in his 70s who sat alone in a park nearly every afternoon. He wasn't bitter, he wasn't angry, but there was a sadness in his eyes that words could hardly describe. We talked for hours. Eventually, he said something that settled deeply into my heart. I thought I had more time. Not more money, not more talent, not more opportunity, more time. He explained that he had postponed conversations he needed to have. He postponed learning. He postponed forgiving. He postponed taking care of his health. He postponed pursuing the dream that had lived inside him since he was young. Every delay felt harmless, until one day he realized his future had quietly become his past. That conversation changed me, because tomorrow has a dangerous habit. It convinces us it is guaranteed. It is not the greatest illusion we ever believe, is that there will always be another chance. Sometimes there is. Sometimes there isn't. Which is why thoughtful action matters so much. Not rushed action. Not reckless action. Purposeful action. Think before you move. Then once you've thought with honesty, with courage, with patience, with vision, move with everything you have. Don't hesitate because of fear. Don't keep waiting for perfect conditions. There comes a moment when preparation must become action. Seeds cannot remain forever in your hand. Eventually, they must enter the soil. Plans cannot remain forever inside notebooks. Eventually, they must become habits. Dreams cannot remain forever inside imagination. Eventually, they must meet effort. And that is where so many lives begin to separate. Because after careful thinking comes the moment that asks an even deeper question: what kind of person are you becoming every time you choose between comfort and growth, between excuses and ownership, between the life that happens to you and the life you deliberately decide to build? Because whether you realize it or not, every decision is introducing you to someone, not someone you'll meet, someone you are becoming. That is one of the greatest mysteries of life. People spend years trying to discover themselves, when in reality they are creating themselves. Every choice adds another brick. Every habit strengthens another wall. Every promise you keep to yourself shapes another piece of your identity. Identity is not built in dramatic moments. It is built in ordinary mornings, when nobody is watching, when nobody is applauding, when nobody would even know if you chose the easier path. Let me tell you something. The world often celebrates achievements. Life rewards character. Achievements may open a door. Character determines whether you stay inside the room. You can receive an opportunity because of talent. You keep that opportunity because of discipline. You can earn money through intelligence. You preserve wealth through wisdom. You can attract people with confidence. You keep meaningful relationships through integrity. Character quietly supports everything success places on your shoulders. Without it, success eventually becomes too heavy to carry. I remember hearing about a man who inherited a successful family business. Everyone assumed he would become even wealthier than his father. After all, he had better technology, better education, more resources, more connections. Everything seemed to favor him. But within a few years, the business began to fall apart. Customers disappeared. Employees resigned. Opportunities vanished. People blamed the economy. They blamed competitors. They blamed bad luck. But an older employee who had worked there for over 30 years simply said, the business didn't fail because the market changed. It failed because the man changed. Think about that. Sometimes the greatest loss in life isn't external, it's internal. The moment a person stops thinking carefully, the moment pride replaces humility, the moment shortcuts replace standards, the moment convenience replaces principles, everything begins to weaken. Here's what most people don't understand. Success is fragile. Not because success itself is weak, because the habits that protect success require constant attention. Imagine building a beautiful garden. You spend months preparing the soil, planting carefully, watering consistently, removing weeds. Eventually flowers begin to bloom. People walk by and admire the beauty. What they don't see is that tomorrow morning the weeds will return. Not because the garden failed, because maintenance never ends. Character works the same way. Discipline works the same way. Your thinking works the same way. The moment you believe you've arrived, growth quietly leaves. That is why wise people remain students, no matter how much they accomplish, no matter how much they earn. No matter how respected they become, they continue asking questions. They continue listening. They continue observing. They never assume they know everything. Humility protects wisdom. Pride blinds it. I learned something years ago from a school teacher who had spent over 4 decades helping children grow. Someone asked her what separated the students who eventually became successful from those who struggled throughout life. Everyone expected her to mention intelligence or grades or talent. Instead, she smiled and said, "The children who learned to pause before reacting became adults who could lead before speaking." That answer stayed with me, because leadership is not about having the loudest voice. Leadership begins with mastering your own responses. If you cannot lead your emotions, how will you lead a family? If you cannot lead your habits, how will you lead a business? If you cannot lead your own thinking, how will you influence anyone else's future? Everything begins within. The greatest victories are invisible, long before they become visible. A person who conquers impatience wins a battle nobody applauds. A person who forgives instead of seeking revenge wins a battle nobody photographs. A person who gets out of bed before sunrise to prepare for a better future wins a battle nobody posts on social media. Yet those quiet victories slowly become extraordinary lives. We often compare our behind-the-scenes struggles with someone else's highlight reel. That comparison is dangerous because you are measuring reality against presentation. Every successful person has days of doubt. Every disciplined person has moments of temptation. Every confident person has experienced fear. The difference is not the absence of struggle. The difference is what they do after the struggle arrives. Think before you move. Do not let a temporary feeling become a permanent direction. I once spoke with a woman who had lost nearly everything. Her business failed. Her savings disappeared. Her closest friends slowly drifted away. For a season, she believed life had forgotten her. Every morning, she woke up with disappointment sitting beside her. One day, she made a decision that looked almost insignificant. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" she began asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" That single question transformed her life. Nothing around her changed immediately. Her bank account remained empty. Her problems remained real. But her perspective changed. And perspective changes behavior. Behavior changes habits. Habits change identity. Identity changes destiny. Never underestimate the power of a better question. Questions are like steering wheels. The quality of your questions determines the direction of your thinking. Ask yourself weak questions. You'll receive weak answers. Why am I so unlucky? Why does nobody believe in me? Why does life always punish me? Your mind immediately begins collecting evidence, but ask stronger questions. What skill should I develop next? What responsibility have I been avoiding? What lesson can I carry forward? What decision would the person I want to become make today? Suddenly, your mind begins searching for possibility instead of limitation. That is one of the greatest gifts human beings possess, the ability to redirect attention. Where attention goes, energy